Well, when you first meet someone, you have this first impression thing going on, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But a couple of years ago, I met this guy, and my first impression, to be honest, I didn't know him, but my first impression of him is, man, here's somebody that's sincere and authentic and real. And I just kind of connected with him and enjoyed meeting him. And I found out it was now my dear friend, Steve Shaw. And Steve, I'm so glad that you've chosen to give us a little bit of your very valuable time. I know you're incredibly busy. I know you are slammed with all that you do with the NCAA. And we talked about that in the intro, but I appreciate you being willing to come and help us to learn a little bit about leadership and learn about your life, and being willing to share that means an awful lot. Welcome to Crossing the Line podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Larry. It's great to be with you, and I appreciate you as well for what you do and what you're doing in the world today. So thank you for what you do as well.
Well, we're on a journey, and that is to learn and grow and help others to learn and grow and to speak into their life. So, I want us to think about today, not the very important and significant things that you do, and you have risen to heights in this organization, the NCAA. But I want us to talk today about you. I want to talk about Steve. I want to learn about who you are and what made you into the leader that you are today. So if you will, let's travel back in time. Let's go back, and we're going to go back to when you were just a child. Take us back to the 8-year-old, the 9-year-old Steve, and tell us, where were you, and tell us what was a day in the life of Steve, the 8 or 9-year-old.
Wow. Well, that's a scary thought, going back that far. But, I grew up, I was very lucky. We grew up in an area outside of Birmingham called Bluff Park. It was kind of out in the country. Now it's all the big city of Hoover, but it was out in the countryside, and I had great parents and really had a carefree life. You could do what you wanted to do. And, but my parents were always instrumental in talking to me about doing the right thing, helping people, doing things that would make a difference. And I'm always thankful for that. And nothing I did to create that. But and it, as you grow, everybody's involved in school, and how important is that? And probably in my early years, that wasn't really important. We played sports. That's all we did. I mean, right. There was not like, you didn't focus on one sport. When it was football season, you were playing football, then basketball, then baseball. And so we were always doing something. And if we couldn't do that, we made a game up. But it gives you that competitive feel. And so, I always talk about, it appears, if you look at my resume, it looks like I was a good student. I really wasn't that smart, but I was just competitive. You weren't going to beat me. If you were going to make an A, I was going to make a little higher A. And so, but I'm thankful that all that was there, because I wasn't doing it purposefully. I wasn't mindfully doing it, but, doing well in school mattered, but we were just being competitive.
Well, you were, and you said something too. If we didn't have a game, or if we, didn't want to play the games that we made up a game. What, even back then, Steve, and I hear this from leaders when I talk to them today, that ability to be innovative, that ability to create, I believe it may be a lost art in today's world. What do you think?
Well, it is. And I look at everything a lot of times through an official's lens. But here's another thing it does, now, in many of the programs for youth sports that we have are terrific. But everything is travel ball and so organized and so regimented. And, sometimes parents think every peewee game is going to determine if they're going to get a scholarship or not. And it's really not. But I think that one that's kind of lost is, we did in the summers, we would make up games, or we would, take what looked like baseball, but modify it to the backyard and where the trees were, and, what the fence was and all that. But, the other part of it is, we didn't have, that umpire there. We didn't have, a coach. And so you had to solve your conflicts. Were you safe or out, or who's going to bat first? You had to solve that as a group together as young kids. And that's something that I think was very helpful. And I
Wow.
really wish we had more of that. And now it's also regimented and organized. Sometimes we lose that. Sometimes you have to solve a problem as a group together. And that was great training to do that.
You have nailed what I have found over and over again with leaders. They because of their life and because of the experience that they had primarily as children, learned to problem solve. They didn't have anybody to solve the problems for them. And once again, I think we're losing that ability to have conflict, overcome conflict, to when we bump up against things, to learn how to navigate that, to either push through that or go around it. All of those important things that you learned out there, making up these games and playing them and officiating yourself. So now, Steve, you're out there, you're living just a great life. You're in the country, you're out. But preteen sets in. Here we are in junior high now. Now we're Steve, the junior high guy. What's life like for you there? And how are your parents dealing with that?
Well, it stayed kind of similar. Our family was focused on sports, and that's kind of what we did together
Really?
as a group. And my parents both played golf. And so, then that brought, a golf influence in as well. And later years, my wife said, my wife, Jamel, great athlete, and but never played golf until we met. And she said, "Hey, I want to learn how to play golf." And I was like, "Nah, you don't have to do that." And she said, No. If I'm going to fit in your family, I'm going to have to learn that. But it was really, again, sometimes I think a too protected life, right? But, our focus was, the sport of the year, still making good grades in school and having great friends. But that's really, the things that I remember out of those, formative years are the friends you made, through all those activities. And some of those are lifelong friends. And, but I think that, there was still for me, there was no view of, you talk about leadership. I mean, I was just kind of mind numbing through the day, going to school, supposed to make an A. Okay, now we got practice and going there. So, there wasn't this vision and goal of, I wasn't 14 years old and said, I want to be, this or that. I was just kind of working through, and having fun and doing a lot of things that were great, but never really at that point in my life had a vision and goal and something that this is what I want to aspire to. That we just kind of worked, just kept going. And so sometimes I wish at some point in there, you'd have said, okay, my goal, my vision, and really lock that in. But at that age, it was just kind of working through the sport of the day or the friend of the day.
Yeah, you said that so well, working through. And even at 14, 15, you went to school, you tried to make A's, you were competitive, then you went to practice so you were taught a work ethic. Today, if somebody says, I tell you what, I can show up to work on time and I'll do what I say I'm going to do. Wow, we're all amazed because it's so rare. But it used to be quite different, didn't it? Those were things that were expected of you as a teenager. Work hard and do what you say you're going to do, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny, and I'm not trying to move you along, but I remember my first day when I had a real job, my first real job. I went to work for AT&T out of college and was so excited. And my first interaction with my new boss. So, your first day, he kind of gave me a couple things to do. And then at the end of the day, we sat down and talked. And so the first question I asked him, I said, what do you have to do around here to be great? What do you have to do to be successful? And I'll never forget, he kind of leaned back in his chair and he said, just show up. And I looked at him and I thought, wow, I thought it would take a lot more than just showing up. I think he said, just show up on time. But what he really meant was not just to show up, but to be there, to be engaged, to be present in the moment and to really be part of that. So it was more than just showing up. But to your point now, the discipline of all of that, sometimes you worry that, the youth of today maybe doesn't get that discipline around that. And so not that the youth of today isn't great. I mean, when you look at some of the athletes and players and people we deal with, I mean, they're fabulous. But there was a different, you called it work ethic, discipline, whatever that is, that was kind of instilled in us growing up that sometimes now that may not be there. And especially with people that, I admit I was lucky because I had this kind of, 2-parent home, easy life. I never worried about having next meal or, what was going to happen next. But all kids aren't like that. And some really have tough circumstances to overcome back to 14 years old and 15 years old. And that's where, discipline can be one of the things that gets you through that process.
Yeah, I just wonder if we've lost that discipline, and I don't think COVID helped. We all had to, work from home, and data is showing now that even those strong proponents of remote work are realizing that you really just can't have 100% remote work, that there has to be some different type of, because of the discipline to perform with excellence on a consistent basis and the collaboration. But besides that, I think when you were growing up, I think it was a different day, a different time, a different expectation. The expectations were just different. And you learned that at a very early age. So as a high school guy, were you the jock? Were you the superstar in the high school on the teams? Who were you back then? Now you're, junior and senior in high school. Who are you?
Well, and you hit it. Although, there were some great athletes that we were around, but I played 3 sports. My sophomore year, football, basketball, right into baseball. And that was a lot. I mean, it was a lot. And I remember after my sophomore year and in fact, making the baseball team, the varsity baseball team as a sophomore, was a huge deal. But then I played second base, and the second baseman ahead of me was all state as a junior coming back for his senior. So I got to rub up a lot of balls and pinch run and pinch hit a lot during the year. But at some point in that, it said, 3 sports, that's a lot. And so I decided to, I still kept 3 sports, but in that, baseball window, I decided to shift to golf. And it was almost like taking a semester off and playing golf and doing that, but on the golf team. But yeah, that was the focus. Keep your grades up and do that. But then you're really setting your foundation right then for your life. And we didn't know it. That's what I love to talk to people about, is that, it's so important. We talk about in officiating how it's so important, your integrity and your character. Every official goes through a background check every year. And we look not only at criminal history, but your financial history and all. I mean, you don't have to be rich to be an official, but you can't have a negative issue in there. And a lot of times, as an official, we think, okay, well, I'm an official now, I have to live the straight, narrow, clean life. But when do you start building that integrity and character? And it's early in life. And that's the message you want to get to kids, is that no, you're setting your integrity and your character for life right now.
That's so good.
You can't just wait, till you get that big job and say, okay, now I'm going to clean everything up, because it's still going to be there as part of your history.
That is brilliant. You're living your legacy right now. You're living it. That's a great word. So you went and played golf a bit. Now you're graduating. What happened in college? Did you go? Were you on a scholarship? Talk that through.
When I was a senior, I had a couple of opportunities, but nothing at the Division I level. And so, I wrestled with a lot of that and wound up going to school. I was a math major, a little geeky, but
I didn't know that.
And so didn't play a sport in college. Many times that's a regret, but I would say I really, as it turned out, it really worked out good. But I felt like I could have, would have, should have, but I kind of went where, I thought was the right place, got an education, thought I wanted to be a coach. And really, people ask me all the time, how did you get into refereeing? People, you can talk to, 1,000 high school students. What do you want to be when you grow up? Doctor, lawyer, programmer, game player, whatever. There's so many more options now. Influencer, social media influencer. There's so many things. But you can talk to 1,000 kids, not one will say, I want to be a referee. I want to be a referee, right? And so I thought I wanted to be a coach. And but I did some interviewing in school, and had good grades and math major, which, teaches you no skill, but you've got a basis to do a lot of different things. And so I got a job offer from AT&T, making more money than I ever thought I would make, and certainly a lot more than you would have as a starting out coach. So I thought, I'm going to go do that for a couple years and really see, save some money and then figure out where I'll go in coaching. But I moved back. I grew up in Birmingham area. I moved back to Birmingham and with AT&T. And so immediately a couple of the high school coaches called, said, hey, you need to get involved. We need good officials that played the game and all that. And so I thought, hey, great idea, great way to stay involved in the game. It was a game I loved. And so that's really how that whole process of, wanting to be an official and a message to, I mean, people that, officiate still have day jobs. And that's true. I mean, even NFL officials have day jobs. And so, football officiating allows that. And if you'll let me do a commercial, I mean, we're right now in a crisis in officiating. We're not getting the young people replacing, the people that are retiring. And it is a great spot. And football is kind of unique because, when you take those pads off for the last time, it's very different. Basketball, there are rec leagues after you quit playing, and baseball and softball, and soccer, all these sports, you can keep doing that. But in football, when you take those pads off, you're done. You're done forever. And the opportunity to be in a team sport as an official, is really a great thing. So it's something that as I transitioned through that, wanted to coach, took a job to save some money and then got involved in officiating and never looked back, as far as coaching or everything. I wanted to be an official.
So let's talk about that for just a minute. You said you used the term team sport as an official. So is it a team sport for officials? And if so, tell me about it.
It absolutely is. We talk about, I mean, the bonding as a crewmate, and when you walk out on the field and there's 8 officials and 100,000 in the stands, you get tight pretty quickly, right? But what you find is that as you work together as a crew, that there's just this natural bond because you're in a pretty intense environment every week, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, even more in today's world with all the social media. I mean, your call is on YouTube before you even get off the field. And so, the intensity of that and the preparation and the work that you go in really bonds that crew together. And it is a team. People don't think about it much, but there's 3 teams out on that field. There's an offense, a defense, and an officiating team. And
wow.
And so, we work together. You have to be, dependent on one another. I mean, just like a running back's dependent on his offensive line. I mean, as a referee, I was a position referee, but when we have a pass downfield, people always come up to me after the game, hey, did you see that great catch? And I'm like, no, I didn't. My responsibility is that quarterback and the action around them. And if I turn and look downfield and that quarterback's laying in a puddle of blood and I don't know how he got there, that's a bad day, right? So I'm working my part of the game. I'm trusting that back judge, side judge to handle that part of the game, and then working together as a crew and our mechanics. So it is truly a team sport that you have to have interdependency and reliance on one another. And even as the referee, when they have something, they have to bring to me great information so we can sort it out, figure it out, make a great announcement and move on. So it's a great team sport, and all those life lessons in team sports that you learn growing up apply immediately to officiating.
It's amazing now. Go all the way back to as a child when you were playing those games and you said we had to work things out on our own. We had to come together and figure things out. And you were learning team building skills way back then that you are using or that you used in your officiating. And so tell me this, and we're kind of talking a little bit about this officiating because I think it's so relative to leadership. When you have a team of officials like that and you're on this team, how do you know that, and how do you create because I guess they work together throughout this. Does one team work together throughout the season? Is that the way it works?
They stay together.
So how do they overcome their, hey, maybe this guy has a different personality than this other guy, or maybe they don't really like each other. What happens? How do they work that out? What have you seen?
Well, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, you come together. One of the things that is a big area that we've really worked hard in officiating is to be more inclusive. And, we had minority officials that we had really underperformed with as far as bringing them along and training them and nurturing them. And we've really worked hard to do that. But, ultimately your crew is like life. There's going to be, variances in backgrounds. Even now we have females working in college football, high school football, really in all officiating, and how you work together, just like you said, to solve issues. But and really it goes further than that. I mean, especially as a referee, my responsibility is our pregame and, all we do to prepare for that game. And you've got to be wide alert in those pregames. Somebody may be having a bad week at work or something bad going on at home. One of their kids is in trouble or something like that. I mean, and you've got to recognize, because if one of our crewmates is not performing, then that could hamper the whole crew. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be wide alert to say, hey, Joe's not participating in pregame this week. Let's draw him in. What's going on? Recognize those kind of things, and then be the support group. I mean, we'd love to say, from an officiating standpoint, they have perfect lives at home and all that, but they face the same thing that everybody else faces. Right. But when they pack their bags and fly out on Friday morning to go to their game, what we always want to do, and we talk about it as a crew, when I always felt when that plane took off, I took, all the worries of home and job and all that and just packed it away. And it was going to be away for like, a day and a half, our Saturday and till we got, Friday night, Saturday. You try to just pack that all away. And then you can take back on the worries of the world, on Sunday morning when, everything's over. But recognizing, hey, this crewmate's struggling. How do we support them? How do we get them back, get their mind back? All those kind of things are so important as we, as an officiating crew, work together to support and help one another. And it's amazing what you see. We had, there's been great officials over the years, in the NFL ranks. Jerry Markbright, most of your people never have heard the name, so you can go Google him. And, one of a great, was somebody that I really admired and looked up to. And, he gave me good advice along the way. But they were asking, I don't know if I can hit this exactly right, but there was a group that was asked, if you had to put, 5 words together to talk about your life or your officiating life, and his was, all my best friends are officials. I guess it was 6 words. All my best friends are officials. And and obviously you have family and you have really close friends, but the bonds you create in officiating are there for life. I have, Butch Lambert was an umpire that I worked with, and we're always texting or talking one another. And, he's retired. He's down in Florida now, living the good life. But it's that bond that never goes away. And we do it in officiating, but people have that in all type jobs or endeavors of you create that bond that really never separates.
What a great leadership thought, though, that you got to be able to compartmentalize so that you can execute. But that doesn't mean you don't have a relationship. It means that you are committed to the execution of the task, but then also you have the relationship that for you has really lasted a lifetime. So put this in perspective, and I can talk to you all day, but our time is fleeting. But I've got to ask you this. So help put all this in perspective. In your organization, how many officials are in the NCAA? Do you have a guesstimate? Is that too big a question?
Wow, that's a huge question, because we have Division 3, 2, and 1. I use an example. We had this past weekend. We did a meeting. We brought all of our referees, just the position referees, the white hat, together with D1, and then we had invited some D2 and D3. and we had over 200 people in the room, really good.
Wow.
And our goal there is to get everybody on the same page, same rules interpretation, same mechanics, same philosophies or standards to work through. But then, you multiply that times 8 and then the number of conferences. So it's a big number. I've never really counted that up. It's a really good question. I need to go.
It's a huge number. It's in the thousands. I know.
Up.
And
but it is.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it is a big number. And part of my role today is how do we get all of those people on the same page? One of the things we're fighting, people watch games and they say, well, the Pac-12 calls it this way, or the SEC or the ACC or the Big Ten. And my role now is we should be kind of one group, we call it CFO. Again, maybe a little geeky, but if you look on the shoulder of our officials, it has a little pennant with CFO. That's College Football Officiating. It's an LLC. But one of the goals is it's a national game. We have got to be all together on that. And so we talk about one CFO, and that's what great. We try to get done. And that's a daunting task, but that's where we're headed. That's where we need to be in our game.
Now you're talking about enterprise loyalty, and it is incredibly important in any organization to create that unity and boy, what a great leader. I could listen to you and learn all day long, and you have such a great responsibility. But as we close, I just want to pick your brain just for one more minute, if I could. So think about all that you've accomplished, leading multiple teams, multiple opportunities to instill and influence, and you do such a beautiful job and such a man of integrity and leadership. What would you say to those people who are thinking about their life and saying, I'm just starting my leadership journey, or maybe I'm in my leadership journey now and I don't know, I need some leadership help. I need some thoughts around how to be successful as a leader. What nuggets of wisdom could you leave with us today?
Well, boy, that's a heavy question. But 3 things come immediately to mind. A couple I mentioned, having a vision and having a goal is so important. And regardless of what you're leading or where, have a vision and have a goal. The Bible says without vision, the people perish, right? And that's true in a leadership role, that if you don't have a vision and you don't have a goal, and that's something that I wish I'd have learned, when I was, in junior high, but learned later in life to really have that vision and goal. And then the other thing is communicate. You can never over communicate. I had a boss that one time said, your organization, they need to hear this 7 times before it even starts to sink in. So communications is so important through that. And then, understanding ultimate destiny versus your vision and goal and short-term destiny. I've used this in relationship to our sports and how important that was to me growing up. But, there are games every year that are, I think fans sometimes get kind of over the edge, in our state, Alabama and Auburn, but there's Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, there's these games that, it's like life or death, right? Well, guess what? It isn't, because after this year and there's an Alabama Auburn game or Ohio State, Michigan, there's going to be one next year, and there's going to be one next year. And I think, part of this and what you do such a great job is tie leadership into faith, but there's ultimately one destiny for you. There's not a do-over. There's going to be another Alabama Auburn game next year and the next and the next, but in your life, there's no do-overs. And so ultimate destiny is so important. And that's what I appreciate about you. You blend that, your faith, with what you do. And that's what we need to hear more.
Man, I appreciate that. And it is about a purpose greater than ourselves, isn't it? And when that's a great way to put that, well articulated, Steve. Just a man of wisdom and integrity and leadership. You are living your legacy and you're impacting thousands as you do that. Thank you for giving us a bit of your time and sharing your story is way much, there's much more to it than what we were able to talk about today, but thank you for sharing that and encouraging us and helping us to have just a little insight into who you are and more importantly, insight into why you are. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing your purpose. Thanks for being with us. And we're going to look forward to your cruise. And I know, man, you just got to feel for them because people are ruthless and social media has made it a lot worse. But we'll be thinking about you and thinking about them, and hope you just have a tremendous, successful year this year as we enter into the football season this fall.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. And I would just want all the fans out there to know our crews are working hard, and it's May, and they've been working for the last few months to be ready for this season. So we're excited about it. But again, thank you. It was my pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Steve.